Chapter 81. Forest encounter days passed, and the ambush never came. The Adelat River was calmer than most streams on the northern continent. There were no drowners, no roving rafts of brigands, but that tranquility did nothing to ease the Witcher's unease. Sir Royce and his men felt it too, an oppressive stillness like the hush before a storm. The only ones heartened by it were Tyrion and his caravan guards, and the bard Marillion, who sat staring at the dark water and the forested banks, trying to invent a poem about a battle that did not happen. Although the Adelat ran through both the kingdom of Carrick and the kingdom of Sidaris, almost no Sidarian merchant ships used it. Sidaris preferred land routes that ran north of the Brokilon Northern Forest, straight to Temeria's Velen, or else the sea. They had no need to fight Carrick for navigation rights on a river whose source lay in the uninhabited Brokilon. Nearly a week after leaving Carrick, the barge finally drew up at the riverbank. Sir Royce was the first off to secure the landing, leaving his men to take up positions. Only after he satisfied himself there was no immediate danger did the Golden Lion caravan unload. They carried no trade goods. This was not a mercantile run, only essential supplies for traveling through the wild. Wagons would have been useless in the forest, so the caravan had come with pack horses instead. Linn, Triss, and the visibly nervous but still curious Marillion were among the last to disembark. "Sir Royce, we'll be returning to Carrack now. I wish you well," Sir Royce's captain said, and the barge pushed off and made its way back downriver. Sir Royce divided his 10 soldiers into 2 groups. He rode at the head with 2 grooms to tend the horses and 4 soldiers as vanguard. The remaining 6 men took up the rear. In this manner, Tyrion, his 5 caravan guards, and 1 cook would be protected in the center, with Linn, Triss, and Marillion sheltered among them. When the arrangements were complete, Sir Royce turned to Linn. "Witcher, anything to add?" "None," Linn said. "This will do." They moved into the forest. The trees twisted upward like desperate hands. The canopy shut out the sun, leaving everything in a dim green gloom. A dank, fetid smell rose from bubbling mud and stagnant pools. Those morasses looked like traps waiting for prey, and even from a distance made the skin on one's scalp prickle. No one spoke. Even Marillion, who had been chattering and composing on the boat, was silent now. The poet's enthusiasm drained away. Then Linn, walking in the middle of the formation, hissed a single command. "Stop." The group was short enough that his voice reached the front. Sir Royce ordered his men to halt and rode back to stand beside Linn. "Witcher, what is it?" Tyrion and the caravan guards turned to him, puzzled. Linn motioned for absolute quiet. "Do you hear that?" They listened. At first there was nothing. No birdsong, no insects, no small forest sounds. It took a moment for everyone to realize how wrong that was. Even a well-tended nobleman's garden would buzz with life. Here, in the heart of the woods, there was nothing. The absence of sound was a presence of its own. With a soft pop, Linn bit off a cork and swallowed a superior thunderbolt potion. He followed it with superior blizzard, Petrie's filter, and a superior tawny owl potion. His mutations dulled the normal toxicity, allowing him to take 4 such draughts in succession, but the potions still took a visible toll. His skin went a sickly shade, and the muscles at his jaw worked. The men instinctively stepped back a few paces. "Get ready. They'll come soon," Linn said, his voice low and even. "Form ranks," Sir Royce roared. 10 soldiers hurriedly closed in, planting a ring of shields into the soft, muddy earth. Tyrion, his cook, and the caravan guards fumbled for crossbows and bolts from the packs on the horses. They weren't as well armed as Royce's men, but they'd had some training and could hold the line. "Please, for the love of goddess Melitele, give me a crossbow too," Marillion begged with a face full of misery. No one obliged. Better a helpless burden than a quivering man with a loaded weapon to misfire and betray them all. The air sat heavy around them. Palms grew slick with sweat, hearts hammered. Anticipation was almost worse than sighting an enemy, the small, suffocating dread that something terrible was coming and had not yet arrived. The wait ended at last. From somewhere in the trees came a rapid rustling, the sound of something moving fast, brushing against leaves and snapping thin branches. Chapter 82. Here they come. Even the soldiers, carefully selected for this mission, felt their arms tremble. The caravan guards, half crouched behind the shields, aimed their crossbows through the gaps and dared not breathe. Even the impetuous Sir Royce turned to look at Triss, hoping for courage from the sorceress. Triss did not disappoint him. Her face remained composed. When she met Sir Royce's gaze, she gave him a quiet, reassuring smile. The hesitation and panic in his chest eased by more than half. He stamped his boot and called, "Soldiers, hold! Fight for the king!" The soldiers answered with a roar. The restless rustling around them gradually subsided, not because the presence in the forest had gone, but because it had completed its encirclement. The next sight confirmed their dread. "Merciful Melitele, what is that?" Tyrion blurted. Only then did everyone see the shapes emerging from the gaps in the trees. Black wolves, or at least things that had once been black wolves. Their eyes were bloodshot, their fur matted and filthy, multiple torn wounds gaped along their flanks, long dried blood crusting the gashes. Bones jutted from some of the holes. "What are you waiting for, Tyrion? Tell your men to fire. Shoot them!" Sir Royce bellowed, snapping Tyrion from his daze. The short merchant, normally smiling, now showed a sharp edge. "Fire arrows! Free fire! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh!" Arrows flew in a sparse volley toward the wolf pack. Fewer than half found their marks, the rest fell useless in the brush. Worse, the arrows that did strike only seemed to enrage the dead wolves. The creatures howled and surged forward like a black tide. Awoo! Triss's incantation cut through the chaos. Adan quen spars perpet lon vort. Her staff slammed the earth with a thunderous clang. A defensive spell erupted in a flame-like orange glow around them, rising from the muck and shaping itself into a bowl-shaped barrier, inverted to form a magical dome that sheltered everyone inside. The stench of rot filled the air as the dead wolves slammed against the barrier, rippling its surface, but could not break it. The protective wall held like a reef against the tide. "Kill!" Sir Royce roared and swung his longsword, cleaving the head from a dead wolf. From the severed neck, black roots writhed as if trying to pull the head back. Royce cut those roots apart and drove his blade into the wound. The headless corpse crumbled to black ash almost instantly. "Don't be afraid," he cried. "They're not immortal. Cut off the heads and sever the black roots inside them. That's how you kill them." Inspired, the men abandoned their shields, gripped their swords with both hands, and slashed. Roars filled the clearing. Blood spattered the mud. On the other side, Linn moved like a blade of lightning. His silver sword traced clean, masterful arcs. The dead wolves were cut down as if made of paper. The superior Thunderbolt potion had enhanced his strength, and his mutation enhancement specialization amplified it further. He felt as if he'd unlocked some divine skill. No corpse could withstand his blows. Where steel failed, fire finished the job. The thick fur of the dead wolves was perfect tinder for a witcher's igni. Linn sent a masterful burst of flame, and the burning corpses hindered the pack's assault. Triss kept the barrier steady. Between her magic and Linn's slashes and fire, the wolves could only batter themselves against the invisible wall. The piles of corpses grew. By the time only 10 or 20 of the dead wolves remained, something in them seemed to shift. Like beaten strays, they whimpered, turned, and fled back into the forest. No one pursued. The soldiers were gasping, bodies slick with sweat and mud. Relief and a fierce exhilaration at surviving swept through them as they collapsed onto the ground where they stood. Everyone sat except Linn and Triss. The sorceress maintained the protective weave so the creatures couldn't return, and the witcher, barely winded by the brutal work, kept his eyes sweeping the tree line. He wiped blood from his silver blade and scanned the forest. Leaves shivered. The ground trembled. "What is that?" someone whispered. The commotion grew, like the sound of a large force approaching. But cavalry in such dense woods would be impossible. Any knight formation would be torn apart by spears and ambush. No king would send horsemen into Brokilon's heart. Before they could work it out, a huge black shape crashed through the trees along a path it made for itself, charging toward them with terrifying momentum. Chapter 83. My turn, my turn, my turn. Gods, is that a bear? How can a bear be that huge? A dark shadow loomed through the trees. A bear, but far larger than any bear anyone present had ever seen. Even on all fours, it was as tall as a 2-story house. If it stood upright, it would be astounding. Its black fur was matted with mud and dried blood, and a huge greatsword jutted grotesquely from its neck. With each stride, the blade swung against its throat. It was a mystery how the beast still lived. Any other creature would have long since died from such wounds. "Get ready." Sir Royce's face was raw with shock and something like despair. His men recovered from their panic and formed a shield wall of 10, but he knew the truth. That wall might not hold for a single strike. They couldn't run. The bear was too fast for them to escape on foot. If flight was impossible, then they had to fight. A voice behind him cleared the air like sunlight parting clouds. "Sir, have your men protect the sorceress and the others. Fall back." Two greater dragon's dream bombs arced through the clearing and landed precisely to the left and right of the charging bear. The explosions threw up a massive shockwave, staggering the beast and veering it into a stand of trees. Trees that would have taken several men to encircle, cracked like twigs beneath its bulk. It staggered to its feet, shaking its head as if confused. Then someone crept up from behind. Pfft! A master-level silver sword sank into a hind leg and twisted. A whoo! The roar was like the earth splitting. The retreating crowd covered their ears. Linn, standing close, felt his ears ring, but he endured it and rolled forward to avoid the bear's slashing claws as it spun. He darted underneath the animal, raking both hind legs and adding several deep cuts. No blood flowed from the wounds, as if the wounds had long since dried. The pain finally made the beast realize the Witcher was a real threat. It threw all four limbs into the attack and, with a mountain of a body, launched itself into the air. It didn't rise high, but it landed with the force of falling boulders. The ground exploded outward, cracking like brittle pottery in a shockwave from the impact. Linn had leapt clear just before the hit. As the bear smashed down, he flipped like a top, landing atop its back and carving a deep wound across its spine with a spinning strike. The group, safely back at a distance, watched the savage duel among the ruined trees in horror. Sir Royce knew that in his place he would not have lasted this long. Tyrion and the caravan's guards were even paler. Their only hope against such a thing would be to run, and they might not even get away. The bard Marillion, though white with fear, could not hide the thrill at having finally found a tale worthy of song. The battle pressed on. Igni. Linn had taken a superior Petrie's filter earlier. It amplified his signs. A jet of burning air licked at the bear's fur and flared immediately. Linn meant to press the attack, but his pupils pinched shut at the last instant, and his charging body snapped backward. A rotten greatsword slammed into the spot where he had just stood, burying itself deep into the muddy earth. The bear had, somehow, wrenched the blade from its neck and was now fighting with the severed greatsword like a cudgel. It had no technique, only brutal, chaotic force, but that was enough. Trees splintered, rocks crumbled to dust, and the earth was gouged with frightening ravines. Even a seasoned knight could not stand against such raw power. But in the middle of this storm of destruction, Linn moved with composure. The superior blizzard potion he had consumed earlier had sharpened his nerves, letting him act quicker than others, sometimes twice in what should have been a single turn. It felt like, my turn, and still my turn. To the onlookers, he moved at double speed. The greatsword was terrifying, but worthless if it couldn't hit him. Linn danced like a small boat over the tornado of strikes, then seized an opening. He vaulted over the wide horizontal sweep of the blade and planted his foot on the bear's paw where it gripped the sword. Using that leverage, he flipped himself through the air. Pfft! The master-level silver sword bit into the bear's paw at something like a wrist. He wasn't done. Ard, an invisible shockwave struck the silver blade embedded in the paw. With a dull thud, the paw was severed. The bear dropped its grip on the greatsword. Linn fumbled at his belt, pulled free a greater dragon's dream bomb, and, without looking, tossed it into the bear's gaping, howling mouth. He snapped his fingers. Flames erupted inside its maw. The beast, shrieking in pain, rolled in the dirt to smother the blaze. Linn sprang across the animal's back and closed in on the base of its neck. The bear thrashed and bellowed, but it was too late. He grasped the master-level silver sword in a reverse grip with both hands and drove it down with every ounce of force he had. The impact shook the ruined forest. The monster collapsed, shuddering the ground once more. But Linn remembered the black roots he had found inside the dead wolves earlier. He ripped a slit open with the silver blade, stuffed a superior dancing star bomb and another greater dragon's dream bomb into the wound, and jumped clear. Boom! Fire burst from the gash. Black roots writhed and flung themselves out of the opening like living tendrils, thrashing as if trying to escape. Countless dark, burning roots streamed from the bear's neck, writhing in near-human convulsions. What on earth is this thing? From the safe distance, everyone felt cold dread crawl down their spines. Not just the bear, the dead wolves before them too. It was as if these creatures had been parasitized by roots, their bodies invaded and animated by something grown from wood. Chapter 84. He disappeared. In the temporary camp, the bonfire crackled. Tyrion, the short merchant who had been pressed into cooking, had proved invaluable. His food smelled and tasted wonderful, and the good meal lifted everyone's spirits. They clustered around the flames, but Tyrion shivered as he remembered the earlier scene and couldn't help asking, "Lady, do you think that could have been necromancy?" Triss held a roasted chicken leg, tearing off dainty bites. At his question, she set it down, wiped her mouth with a handkerchief, and frowned. "Necromancy is forbidden," she said. "Even an accomplished sorceress wouldn't cast it lightly. It consumes vast reserves of magic and can cause irreparable harm. Aretuza and Banard removed necromancy from their curricula long ago. The two academies were renowned across the continent. Aretuza only accepted women, Banard only men. Besides," she added, "to my knowledge, the effects of necromancy don't match what we saw." Tyrion grew grimmer. "I used to hear that some of these forests are older than the elves," he muttered. "Now I believe it. No wonder the merchants from the kingdom of Sidaris handed over navigation rights on the Adalat without a fight." He didn't have to say more for everyone to read the regret on his face. Marillion, who had been oddly quiet, finally spoke. "When I was at Oxenford, I heard a terrifying legend about this forest." The bearded caravan guard scowled. "Is now really the time for stories? Look at where we are." A much younger guard laughed. "What harm? Let's hear it." More people wanted to hear than not, so Marillion cleared his throat and told the tale in a hushed voice. "They say that long ago an ancient race came here through a sphere conjunction. They're peculiar. They survive by hunting wise beings and absorbing their souls. Any wise creature they consume vanishes from the world." The young guard snorted. "That's it? Of course they'd vanish if they're eaten." The bard strummed a chord and shook his head. "It's worse. When they devour someone, it's not just the body that's gone. All traces of that person's existence are erased. Family, friends, lovers, everyone's memories of them fade, as though they never existed." A cold silence fell. Sweat beaded on brows. Nervous laughter and protests tried to break the tension. "No, that's impossible. I can believe hunting and killing, maybe even eating, but erasing existence? Not likely. Legends are tangled, some truth, some nonsense. Didn't they once say witchers are heartless monsters?" Someone jabbed a finger in the direction of the witcher sitting by the fire. The man who had been speaking cut him off. "Wait, legends say witchers are emotionless, but every one of us owes our lives to the Hunter Master. Legends aren't always right." He raised his cup. "To the Hunter Master." Glass met glass, and they drank. When the toast ended, Sir Royce set his cup down and stood. "Gentlemen, I must go feed my horse. We've a long road ahead, excuse me." Triss smiled. "Surely Sir Royce has attendants for that? You don't need to do it yourself." Sir Royce bowed with a knightly flourish. "When it comes to my horse, I trust only myself and my 2 loyal grooms. I forgot to bring them this time. My other men can fight bravely, but tending horses is another matter." After he left, chatter returned to the camp, but the witcher remained silent. Someone prodded him. "Master, why so quiet?" Linn drank some water and spoke gravely. "We're not out of danger yet. We'll need a few days to leave this forest. Who knows what else waits for us? Celebrating too early is a bad omen. Rest now, leave early, and press on as far as we can before nightfall." His words stilled the others. No one accused him of souring the mood. He was right. They were far from safe. They finished their meal in silence, then each took their brief rest. Linn found a patch of earth a little way off, sat, and went into meditation. Triss set her bowl aside and stayed by the fire, drawing magic from the flames. She couldn't tolerate magical potions, and this was one of the ways she could recover her power. After an hour's rest, the caravan moved out again. The formation was the same. Sir Royce and 4 soldiers up front, 6 soldiers bringing up the rear, and in the middle the Witcher, the sorceress, and 5 caravan guards. The forest pressed in around them, humid, stifling heat that made breathing hard and tempers short. The younger guard couldn't help but grumble. If only we'd brought a bard, I'd pay for even his worst songs. They marched on. Chapter 85. It's dark. Please close your eyes. Don't complain. This comes with the job, the bearded caravan guard grumbled. Be grateful we're working for the royal advisor. We'll get a good reward when we finish. Sir Royce, walking at the head of the column, suddenly called the caravan guards over. You lot, come here and have a look. 5 guards hurried over and found Sir Royce and 4 soldiers standing before a large pile of mushrooms. We're running low on food, Sir Royce said, pointing. If this keeps up, we'll have nothing left before we get out of the forest. Can any of you tell if these are edible? The guards exchanged looks. The bearded one shook his head and stepped forward. Best not to eat them. I'm from a village outside the kingdom of Karak. Every year people die from eating poisonous mushrooms by mistake. The Golden Lion Caravan normally has 2 men who can tell poisonous fungi apart, our leader Tyrion and our head cook. It's a pity neither is with us now. A voice came from behind them. Don't worry about the food, Sir Royce. Triss smiled. I can open a portal at any time, Vizima, Novigrad, any of the major northern cities. Sir Royce hadn't expected that his problem would be trivial in front of a sorceress. He relaxed. After that, the march continued without incident. 5 hours of slogging through the stifling, almost maddening forest brought them to a stop. Outside, it should have been evening, and in the thick woods it felt even darker. Linn, with his Witcher night vision, and Triss, who could cast a spell to see in the dark, had no trouble. The rest, including Sir Royce, were at a mortal disadvantage. At night they might as well be blind. After a quick discussion, they decided to camp and move on at dawn. A sorceress needs proper rest if she's to cast well tomorrow, Sir Royce said. Besides, a gentleman shouldn't leave a lady to stand watch. Then the night watch falls to the 12 of us, someone said. Witcher, Sir Royce added, if you don't object, I suggest 3 shifts of 4 men, each shift 4 hours. That way the watches end exactly at dawn. Linn considered the plan. It made sense. Very well, let's do it. They cleared a slightly larger opening and set up 13 tents. The central one, by etiquette, was Triss's. Out of respect, they kept the other tents a polite distance away and hung a circle of curtains around her tent. Others gathered wood and built a fire. Everyone stuck pieces of hardtack on twigs and roasted them over the flames until the biscuits softened enough to eat with a gulp of water. Hardtack was hardly delicious, too salty, and still tough even after roasting, but no one complained. Sir Royce's soldiers were professional. Linn, a Witcher, didn't care about food. Triss frowned, but ate in silence, then retired to her tent. With the watches set, those not on duty turned in. The first shift was Linn and the 3 soldiers Sir Royce had assigned. The men were commoners and, mixing politeness with respect, bowed to him. Master Witcher, we'll be relying on you. Linn nodded. They spread out to cover the camp in different directions and set several torches around the perimeter. No torch burned in front of the Witcher, however. The flames would hinder him. Witcher mutations gave him natural night sight, and after drinking a bottle of superior cat potion, the dim world snapped into sharp clarity. Where others saw shifting blackness, Linn saw tree trunks and shadows and nothing more. No whispering shapes, no things that should not be. Yet despite that clarity, an odd, nagging feeling tugged at him, as if he'd forgotten something important. He could not, for the life of him, remember what it was. It teased at the edge of his mind, like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Night deepened. The forest beyond the circle of torchlight swallowed sound and sight. The wind in the leaves and the hiss of embers were the only things that reminded Linn the world still existed beyond the camp. Time passed without him tracking it. Eventually, footsteps approached. You've done well, Master Witcher. Everything all right? A soldier asked, trying to widen his eyes against the darkness. All normal, Linn said. Good. I'll take the watch. Go rest, Master. He handed over the post, went to his tent, kicked off his boots, and collapsed into his sleeping bag. The day had been long. Travel merged into action, and his body betrayed him. He closed his eyes and slept like the dead. He didn't wake naturally in the morning. Triss rapped on the tent. "How long are you going to sleep, young witcher?" He peeled himself out of the bag, bleary, and stepped into the clear, late morning sky. Chapter 86. The darkness hidden deep in the forest. Outside the tent, Triss stood with one hand on her hip, watching the witcher emerge. "You're finally up, little witcher. Sleep well?" Before Linn could answer, she waved him off. "Never mind. I don't want to hear it. Eat your breakfast quickly so we can get on the road. Otherwise, it'll be dark again in a few hours. Seeing how groggy you are, you haven't forgotten where we are, have you?" Linn felt the remnant haze of sleep. His head wasn't clear yet. "We?" Triss's annoyed look was almost endearing. "What do you mean, we? Did you sleep so long you lost your mind? I gave you a job, remember? Just you and me. We're supposed to investigate the disappearances of Kaer merchants in the Brokilon Northern Forest. Now, guess where we are?" The witcher instinctively answered, "Brokilon Northern Forest." Triss finally smiled. "Correct, but no prize. Seems your brain's waking up. All right, I'm done teasing. Hurry up." Linn took the food from her, but his gaze scanned the clearing. Only two tidy tents stood where they'd camped. The sight nagged at him, an odd itch at the back of his mind. Triss tucked her hair behind her ear and tilted her head. "What's wrong? Not to your taste?" "No." Linn felt a headache gathering. He set the plate down. "Triss, let me ask you something." "Speak." He pointed to himself, then to Triss. "Is it just the two of us investigating this disappearance?" Triss relaxed the hint of a frown. "I thought you'd ask why. King Brohen of Kaer once sent an army into these woods. They vanished without a trace. Realizing mortal strength alone couldn't solve it, a sorceress was needed to act, and a sorceress needs a sword at her back. I hired you in Novigrad. I opened a portal. We went to Kaer City, found a barge at the dock, and followed the Adelat River to its source. We reached this forest yesterday, got off the boat, and ran into wolves and bears twisted by black tree roots. After we beat them off, we made camp here." Linn nodded. It all sounded familiar, except for one detail. "I was on watch alone? How am I in the tent? I relieved you just before dawn. You said you'd take a quick nap and slept until now. Anything else, Master Hunter?" Triss said smoothly, as if everything fit neatly into place. But Linn's unease only deepened. "No, that's not right. There must have been more than just the two of us." Triss's frown grew. She'd hired him for protection, not to listen to paranoias. Before she could rebuke him, he produced a small disc. Her eyes widened. "Wait, how do you have that?" He didn't answer. He lifted Nenneke's eye and threaded it with magic. A faint ring of aura spread outward from the device. Triss watched. At first, nothing seemed to happen. "See? I told you. What's with that face?" Linn's expression shifted. "Look behind you." Triss turned and froze. Beyond their two intact tents lay 11 more, crooked, tattered, pitched in a messy semicircle. Tracks crisscrossed the clearing, boots, claws, and other strange imprints pressed into the soft earth. Even without knowledge of tracking, the evidence was plain. They were not alone here. Triss brought a finger to her temple. A pale thread of sorceress light flared at her fingertip and then died. She swore under her breath. "I have no memory of this. Something in this forest is tampering with me." Linn felt it too. Nenneke's eye had stripped away the glamour, but it couldn't restore faces or names. Still, the traces were clear enough. They hadn't been alone. "From the tracks when we made camp last night, there were at least 11 others with us. There may have been more earlier." He crouched and studied the ground. Then his pupils narrowed. A long, smeared impression cut through the clearing, dark and gouged into the soil. This mark, like a huge snake, dragged across the ground. He closed his eyes and sniffed. A rotten scent, tinged with sap and damp bark, hovered at his nostrils. Not a snake. It's wood, a living, moving tree. He looked into the dim line of trees. Those people, they were dragged off that way. "Did you find anything else?" Triss kept her distance, careful not to disturb the evidence. "Our companions, or at least those who shared our camp, were taken by something in the forest," Linn said. He produced several vials and drank deeply from each, the bitter potion foaming along his tongue. The bottles were strong, the kind that sharpened reflexes and steadied the senses. The fact it took some and not all of us suggests it isn't powerful enough to crush everyone outright. If we move quickly, more of them might still be alive. Triss met his eyes. Then we'll go now." "Of course you're coming. You hired me. You'll be safest by staying close." Linn's grin was sharp and certain. He slung his sword across his back and moved toward the path where the bark and earth had been torn away. They didn't follow the way they'd come. Instead, Linn led them along the dragging mark that threaded into the heart of the forest, the rotten, tree-scented air growing thicker with every step. "Stop!" Linn seized the masterwork silver sword strapped to his back and drew it halfway out, crouching forward like an ice wolf ready to spring. His left hand shaped the Ard sign, fingers poised. Behind him, Triss muttered a few words and rubbed a blazing ball of fire between her palms. Both of them were looking in the same direction. A forest wolf slipped out from behind the trees. Triss had been about to hurl the fireball, but Linn stopped her with a raised hand. Up close, they could see this wolf was different from the other dead ones they'd encountered. Its fur was matted with leaves and mud, but its eyes were not blood red. It bore no wounds and gave off no rot. It was alive. The wolf saw them, froze a moment, then turned and ran wildly for the cover of the trees. It seemed pursued by something terrible. Just as it broke into a full run, dark roots burst from the forest floor like the tentacles of an octopus, lashing out and coiling around the wolf. The animal thrashed, front paws clawing at mud, leaving deep gouges, but the roots held. They drew the wolf under, and despite its frantic struggles, the creature grew still. Only then did the branches release it and set the body at the base of the giant tree in a kneeling, almost worshipful posture. Linn and Triss exchanged looks of rising dread. The people who had vanished from their memories had disappeared the same way. Linn threw up a Quen shield. Triss layered a protective charm atop it, and then they pushed on. Deeper in the forest, they found the source of the horror. Rising from the clearing was a colossal tree, its bark the color of tar and sap running down its trunk a ghostly green. Its canopy spread like a black umbrella that blotted out the sky. Suspended beneath that canopy were dozens, no, hundreds of pod-like sacs. Closer inspection revealed human shapes inside, living people, bound in pods of writhing branches with only their heads exposed. Sir Royce, Tyrion, Marillion, faces Linn recognized, their eyes closed or staring emptily. At the tree's base lay dozens of beast corpses arranged on their forelegs as if kneeling. The wolf they'd seen moments ago hung there, bound by branches, mouth forced wide. A pitch-black root snaked inside the wolf's gullet, burrowing deep as the animal's body convulsed. The wolf's struggles slackened until it went limp. Then the branches released it and set it among the other kneeling corpses. Triss whispered, voice tight with revulsion. "So that's it? You recognize this?" Linn asked. Kaer Morhen's library had gaps. Many records had been lost when the stronghold was besieged. Vesemir had done what he could to remember and rewrite what he knew, but some things had been erased forever. Triss nodded grimly. "In Aretuza's archives there are records," she said. "Either something brought here by the sphere conjunction or a native horror. The flesh mother tree. It feeds on intelligent beings, consumes them, and uses their essence to sustain itself. It erases the very traces of their existence. Those close to the victims even forget they ever existed." "So that's why we don't remember the others," Linn said. Triss kept her eyes on the monstrous trunk. "Nenneki's eye can still show their footprints because the tree hasn't finished digesting them. Nenneki's eye breaks illusions and reveals traces, but once the flesh mother tree has fully absorbed them, even Nenneki's eye will see nothing." She added, "The tree doesn't like animals. It doesn't consume them. It turns them into servants. First it kills them, then its roots parasitize their bodies. Those roots act like parasites, like avatars of the tree, puppeting the corpses. The tree itself, though it had no mouth, released a vibration that rippled the air like a keening, like a signal. The kneeling corpses snapped their heads toward Linn and Triss. Their eyes were a crimson, unblinking tide. The sight chilled Linn to the bone. "They're coming," Triss said. Linn pulled 3 potions from his pouch, Superior Thunderbolt, Superior Petrie's Filter, and Superior Tawny Owl, and drank them in quick succession. The effects sharpened him. Faster reflexes, stronger signs, clearer mind. The flesh mother tree shrieked, and the dead wolves surged forward in a foaming wave. Linn thrust both hands out and let loose 2 burning streams from his palms. The flames tore through the nearest corpses like dragons crossing the clearing. The Petrie's filter and his mutation enhancement specialization amplified his Igni sign into something vicious. Wolves hit by the fire flared up instantly, as if doused in oil, yelping as bones and branches charred and broke. The pack adapted. Those behind veered to the flanks, trying to avoid the twin walls of flame. "Parasites," Linn muttered. "They keep their animal cunning. I hate intelligent monsters." He didn't stop to complain. From another pouch, he drew 4 glass vials, glowing with an ice-blue liquid. The wolves that had circled in lurched forward in a coordinated attack. Without looking, Linn threw the vials, one to each quadrant, and formed Quen with both hands. A bright orange aura bloomed around him, and Triss, the familiar protective shield, humming between them. The vials shattered with sharp, ringing glass. Bitter, cold vapor spat into the air, and for a heartbeat, the world smelled of frost. The temperature dipped, breath misted. The frozen mist met the onrushing corpses, snapping some movements like brittle branches. All at once, the clearing became a crucible. Fire dragons, biting frost, 1,000 dead wolves surging and stalling, the great black trunk watching as it fed. The burst of cold air left a thin crust of frost on the bright orange Quen shield. The high-level northern wind bomb was one of the few alchemical bombs a witcher commonly used that didn't make a sound when it detonated. That didn't mean it was weak. Linn folded the Quen away and looked around. With them at its center, the clearing had been transformed. Mud had become a glassy ice that mirrored their reflections. Frost clung to the trees. The packs of wolves that had circled out to either side were frozen in mid-pounce, turned into eerily lifelike ice sculptures. Chilling vapor still drifted from their forms. A sudden wind blew through the forest, and the ice sculptures collapsed, shattering into countless shards. With the Witcher's protection holding, the sorceress could concentrate on offense. Triss raised her staff. The gem at its tip flared and spat a searing wave of fire that condensed into a tangible, crimson giant bird. The heat washed over Linn. He could feel sweat trickle down his back. Triss aimed at the flesh mother tree. The firebird shrieked, spread its wings, and dove. The flesh mother tree seemed to sense the threat. Its buried roots thrust up, knitting together into a thick, writhing barrier. The crimson bird hit like an avalanche. The heat instantly melted the roots. Flame licked the tree's surface, and a putrid green liquid sprayed out like blood. The great trunk shuddered. With a groan, the tree split open and dumped a heaping pile of, Linn squinted, corpses. "Triss, what is it doing? What are those things?" he shouted. Kaer Morhen's book said nothing about a flesh mother tree, so Linn looked to Triss. She only shook her head. "Those are sentient creatures it devoured to sustain itself. What it'll do next, I don't know." They found out fast. More corpses tumbled forth, and as if pulled by some will, they began to stitch themselves together. Limbs, torsos, heads, and sinew reformed into a 4-limbed crawling abomination, an impossible patchwork of bodies that made Linn's stomach turn. The flesh mother tree, meanwhile, looked drained. Even its huge canopy sagged as if exhausted. The crawling thing fixed its gaze on them and opened a maw that seemed to form words. "Get out of the way!" Linn blasted Triss away with an Ard sign and vaulted to the side. A glob of fetid, acidic liquid landed where they'd stood, sizzling and corroding a pit in the ground. "Give me a few minutes," he yelled. Triss unfurled a scroll. A purple ward rose at her feet. She whirled her staff and planted it. A magical circle unfolded beneath her, and the chaotic energies around them snapped to attention. Seeing she was preparing a finishing spell, Linn unsheathed his master-level silver sword and launched himself like a bolt at the crawling monster. The thing spat another glob of acid. Linn rolled aside. The acid hissed as it met the ice, filling the fissure with noxious steam. He didn't want to imagine what it would do to a human body. As a third glob slid from its maw, a superior dancing star fell into the monster's mouth and detonated. The fiery explosion tore into it, and the beast writhed in pain. Linn closed to within 30 meters. The monster lashed out. Linn dodged, but the creature's massive swing sent flesh and fluids flying. Acid splattered across the frozen ground, leaving pitted scars. Linn rolled clear and threw another superior dancing star. The blast sheared off the monster's extended arm, but the mass simply bled up more corpses and regrew the limb. He kept moving, darting around, dodging acid and flailing limbs, retaliating with bombs. Superior Dancing Star and Greater Dragon's Dream Bombs did the most damage. Fire seemed to wound it more effectively. He'd tried a high-level Northern Wind Bomb too, but it was the fiery blasts that ripped away the foul flesh. Still, the creature resembled a boss with an endless health bar. Chunks were blasted free, only to be filled again from within. Linn checked his belt. Only a handful of alchemical bombs remained. Killing the thing wasn't the point. Drawing its attention was. So far, it hadn't managed to tear through his armor and potions, thanks to Witcher training and concoctions that enhanced his speed and resilience. Any ordinary soldier would have been slaughtered. Suddenly, something wrapped around his waist like a rope and tugged. Linn found himself pulled back and planted in front of Triss. She gripped a magical tether with her right hand. With her left, she pointed high into the sky. Linn followed her line of sight. A blazing fireball the size of a house was streaking down toward the crawling monster. Then, boom. A mushroom cloud rose as the fireball struck, a conflagration that swallowed the abomination and the ruined clearing in a sheet of thunderous flame. Thanks to everyone who voted with monthly and recommendation tickets. Thank you for your support. Chapter 89. It's coming soon. I received a notification from Luxing Dada that the book will go on the shelves tomorrow. I want to thank my editor, Luxing Dada. He's truly a wonderful person, and I'm not just saying that. Whenever I had questions, he patiently explained things to me. I also want to thank everyone who has read this far. Thank you, thank you. There will be a major update tomorrow, so please support the book with your first subscription. This novel actually has an outline and a decided ending, so no matter how it performs, it will be completed. Just as CDPR ultimately gave Geralt an ending where he retired with his loved one, this story will give Linn and the others a good ending too. Once again, thank you all for your support. Chapter 90. Fire in the Hole. The dust from the mushroom cloud took a long time to settle. Where the massive fireball had struck, the crawling monstrosity had vanished, leaving a blackened crater roughly 10 meters across, still smoking. With the corpse-made abomination vaporized, the flesh mother tree itself seemed to have died, leaving only a huge, withered husk. When the Witcher and the sorceress approached, it gave no response. They could not sense any aura. Linn felt it keenly. It had not merely reverted to wood. It was truly dead. Only then did they begin to free the others, cutting people out of the sacks that hung like grotesque hams from the tree's branches. Tyrion, trapped in one of those pods, had his eyes closed. As the sack had grown together with the branches around him, he had felt something impossible. He could not move or open his eyes, yet he could perceive the world beyond the veil. The sensation had been both wondrous and terrifying. He had known all along that the tree's hanging of people wasn't mere ornament, it was a purpose. When the Witcher and sorceress appeared, hope had returned. So when Linn cut Tyrion free, the little merchant did not stand. He clung to Linn's thigh as if the world would crumble if he let go. Tears choked him. He could not form words, emitting only guttural sobs more like an animal than a man. Linn and Triss exchanged a helpless look and took their time calming the merchant, who bawled like a child of 200 years. Eventually, they managed to settle him aside and went on rescuing the others. Those they freed reacted in different ways. Some, like Tyrion, by clinging and weeping, others by repeatedly thanking their saviors. The last to be pulled from the tree was Sir Royce, who had always prided himself on noble blood and fine bearing. He looked ghastly. Even a Witcher who'd swallowed several high-grade potions at once would have seemed healthier. His once elegant attire hung in tatters. A black cloak draped over his shoulders was full of holes, and his shining armor had been shattered. No one mocked him. Everyone rescued from those sacks looked worse for wear, and Sir Royce himself had been hollowed out of his usual arrogance. The ordeal had stripped him of that haughty air. Believing they had saved everyone they could, the group headed out of the forest. They had not gone far when Linn, who led the way, suddenly turned back. Amid the puzzled stares of the others, he returned to the dead flesh mother tree, and with precise force from his master-level silver sword, wrenched open the base of the trunk. From inside, he pulled out a young woman. She was not human. Her long, pointed ears gave that away. She was not an elf or half-elf either. Her skin was green. Leaves served as her clothing. Linn found no wounds. She was merely unconscious. He slung her over his shoulder and rejoined the group. When they finally emerged from the depths of the forest, they stopped to rest. Triss drew a magic circle on the ground and set spellcasting materials at its four corners. Because the portal they needed had to carry several people, raw magical power alone would not suffice. Ritual components were necessary. The mystery that had brought the Witcher and the sorceress was solved. The disappearances of the Kaer merchants and the royal detachment had been the work of the Flesh Mother Tree, an ancient monstrosity whose true age was unknowable. Triss believed the tree had still been in its infancy, which explained the weak impression it had given. That notion only made Sir Royce, Tyrion, and the others paler. They had been captured before they even understood what was happening. Had the Witcher and Triss not come, their fates would likely have been tragic. Sir Royce was blunt in his pessimism. Even if King Brohan called up all 1,500 of Kaer's standing soldiers, it would likely cost them dearly to deal with such a thing. Kaer could not afford such losses. The immediate consequence was clear. The plan to open a new trade route through the forest had to be abandoned. The place was too old, too unpredictable. Killing one Flesh Mother Tree did not prove the absence of others. Better to return to the sea route. Profits might be smaller, but lives would be spared. King Brohan would be displeased, certainly, but what could be done? The kingdom of Kaer was small, about the size of a single Temerian province, comparable to Wyden, less powerful than Sidaris. There were many frustrations at court, but alive merchants earned more than dead ones. Marillion, pale-faced, waved them farewell and promised to repay his debt in songs that would spread across the continent. Linn received the vow with a non-committal shrug. Sir Royce and Tyrion's men followed the bard into the portal to Kaer City, the others walking behind. Before stepping through, Sir Royce and Tyrion stole a glance at the green-skinned woman cradled over Linn's shoulder. Both men were from Kaer, a kingdom that had long clashed with the dryads of Brokilon's southern forests. They recognized her as a dryad, and both understood that presenting a living dryad to King Brohan would bring a rich reward. Still, neither spoke of it aloud. They only offered one more thanks to the Witcher and the sorceress, then stepped into the portal. The forest sighed behind them, and Linn carried the sleeping dryad on, into uncertain weather and an uncertain future. Chapter 91. We are professionally trained. They're not bad. It wasn't in vain that we went to such lengths to save them. As the portal snapped shut, Triss heard Linn say, "If they had even hinted that they wanted that dryad handed over, I would have been disappointed and saddened by the darker side of human nature." But fortunately, none of that happened. Linn finished lightly, then turned to the figure behind him. "Queen Eglaeus, they've all gone. You don't need to pretend to be asleep any longer." The dryad, who had been set beneath a pine by the Witcher, opened her eyes, sprang up, and lowered her stance, ready to pounce at a moment's notice. "How do you know my name?" Linn turned to regard the dryad, her face all alert suspicion. "Not only do I know your name, but I know you lead the dryad's healers. You use Brokilon's potions, Cornhyla vine, and bone-weaving grass to mend the wounded." Perhaps because she had spent so long in Brokilon, the dryad's emotions were worn plainly on her face, simpler even than an elf's. Now confusion crossed Queen Eglaeus' delicate features. "Have we met before? I don't remember you." Linn laughed. "We have, in a manner of speaking. I've seen you through someone I call a brother, through his eyes." "There's no need to go into that now, Queen Eglaeus. You're free to leave. There should be nothing in these woods that can hold you. Or would you like an escort?" The dryad froze, even more puzzled. "You're letting me go? You won't hand me over to your king?" Linn snorted as if he'd been told a joke. "No one is my master, and no one earns my service. Look at my eyes. These are Witcher eyes. I am a Witcher. We are professionally trained and do not pledge ourselves to kings." Eglaeus seemed to try to read him. Her gaze held his, and he met it without flinching. After a long beat, her readiness eased. "From your eyes I cannot see deceit. Very well, I believe you. I don't need an escort. My kin will fetch me." She picked up a short flute that hung at her throat. It looked less like bamboo than a finger bone fashioned into an instrument. She blew it softly. A note that only someone like Linn might register drifted through the trees. After waiting from day into dusk, figures finally move through the undergrowth. Her companions come to collect her. Linn waved. Your companions are here. Go. Pass my regards to Queen Aine, Aglaïs said. Perhaps I'll visit the Dryad's realm in time. I am not your enemy, so do not let a Dryad's arrow find your head. And remember my name, Linn. Don't forget it. The next morning, Linn woke in a soft, velvet bed inside a villa in Novigrad's upper district. Triss lay beside him, smiling in sleep. Though covered by a thin sheet, the sorceress's figure was still elegant, like a woman from a classical sculpture. After Queen Aglaïs left, Triss had teleported them back to her house in Novigrad. Linn had meant to say his goodbyes and leave, then return to collect his reward the next day. Triss had other plans. She led him into the bathroom, her hand delicate and insistent. He went willingly. Anyone who'd ever known Triss would understand why. What followed felt natural. She was ardent and unrestrained, scant caring for the era's restraints on women. If she desired a man, she pursued him boldly. Linn was no eunuch who would turn away a woman who'd already taken the initiative. They kept at it until late. When Triss finally curled her arms around his neck and fell into a deep sleep, Linn slipped away. Perhaps his movement stirred her. She cracked an eye as he sat up. He dressed and murmured, "Sleep a little longer, my lady. It's still early." "Call me Triss. All my friends do." She propped herself on one elbow and patted the bed invitingly. "Come here, my champion." He obeyed, sitting back on the mattress. They lingered in bed for nearly 2 more hours before rising. "What would you like for breakfast?" "Temerian, rich and homey? Nilfgaardian, cold and efficient, taste be damned? Or something very Novigrad, solidly bourgeois?" she asked. "I'll eat anything. Then we'll have a bit of each." She flicked her staff, and pots, pans, and bowls seemed to wake and set about themselves like a disciplined kitchen brigade. In minutes, a table laden with steaming dishes was ready. Linn watched, impressed. Triss ate with knife and fork, graceful as ever, and frowned when she saw him picking green things off his plate like a child. "You should eat those vegetables as devoutly as you eat meat." Linn didn't bother to look up. "I'm allergic to green." Triss rubbed her forehead with an air of mock exasperation. He'd been so composed and reliable all night. Now he behaved like a big kid. Still, she understood him. Witchers often went months without meat. Their work made a balanced diet a luxury, and their mutations meant they weren't exactly fragile. Surviving to an old age wasn't about eating your greens. With a sigh, Triss dropped the subject and let him be. Chapter 92. I am allergic to green. As if she'd just thought of something, Triss glanced at Linn, who was focused on his food, hesitated, then said, "If you're willing, you can come back to Vizima with me. King Foltest wouldn't mind paying an extra guard's wage for his royal advisor." Her hint was plain. Roughing it outdoors or following a sorceress to enjoy the finer things, anyone could guess which she expected him to choose. Linn, however, had already wolfed down the bread and roasted meat on his plate. He picked up a napkin and wiped his mouth with a noble's composure. "Thank you for the offer. I appreciate it." He couldn't attach himself to Triss. He knew too well what the future held. If he stayed the same, not only would the wolf school be in danger, but the sorceress before him could be swept up as well. He couldn't stand by and do nothing while a storm approached. In another timeline, the seemingly perfect ending had been nothing more than the last feast before everyone went their separate ways. The members of the wolf school returned to Kaer Morhen each year, not because the place was enchanted, but because Vesemir was there. Wherever Vesemir was, that was home. If events continued as they had, the wolf school would scatter like the others, and Linn could not accept that. Triss was smart. She caught his look and didn't press him. "If you're going to stay in Novigrad for a while, you can use this house. I've paid 6 months' rent in advance. As for the balance I promised you, give me a little time. I'll come back to this house in a week." Linn wasn't worried she'd renege. Most sorceresses in this era were wealthy, and Triss certainly was. "Take this," she said, handing him a small device. "It's a sound transmission box. It can carry a voice thousands of miles, provided no magic interferes. You can use it to contact me when you need to. When I have your payment, I'll reach out the same way. Don't get yourself killed. Don't do anything foolish. Promise me." Linn looked at her delicate, earnest face and nodded solemnly. "I promise, Triss." "Good." She smiled. Are you full? Now get some sleep. What's with that expression? Haven't you heard the rumors about sorceresses? 2 days later, Linn led his horse, Nidhogg, from the inn to Triss's house. Apart from the horse, he had no luggage. Bringing Nidhogg over meant he had officially moved in. Standing in the empty rooms, he realized a problem. Triss could use magic. She could tidy, conjure food, anything. Living alone in such a big house, cleaning, shopping, cooking, would be a chore he didn't relish. Witchers weren't famed for household management. After thinking a moment, he mounted Nidhogg and rode to Vivaldi Bank. He and Vimy were old acquaintances. The moment the staff saw him arrive, they sent someone to take his horse to the stables and smoothly ushered him into the VIP room. By the time his second cup of tea arrived, Vim's booming voice sounded outside the door. Hunter Master Linn, my friend. It's been too long. Where have you been making your fortune? Linn stood, smiled, and shook the dwarf's hand. Sir Vimus spoils me. A witcher's lot rarely includes riches. I take contracts here and there, kill a monster for coin, that sort of thing. Vim laughed like thunder. Master Linn, don't sell yourself short. You're the most promising witcher I've met. I don't know about the others, but you won't be content with ordinary. They sat, and Linn wasted no time. Thank you. I know you're busy, so I'll be brief. I need you to arrange 1 or 2 servants, just for housework. Short-term contracts will do. Vim stroked his beard. Servants? I've never known a witcher to need servants. No offense, Master Linn. You came to the right place. I don't usually deal in labor, but I can find you someone you'll be satisfied with. He leaned closer and winked. Any special requirements? Linn didn't catch the hint at first. Vim cleared his throat. Besides regular duties, need any extra services? For example, to warm your bed? Linn understood and shook his head. No, just someone diligent, honest, and not prone to embezzlement. Very well. Vim hit the little bell on the table. A dwarf attendant entered. Vimy whispered to him in Dwarvish. The attendant nodded and left. He returned moments later with a small, filthy child in tow. The girl's skin and hair were as pale as snow, and she had ruby-bright eyes, but she was thin and seemed no more than 10. She shrank behind the dwarf, hiding except for her pointed ears. Vim gestured. Come forward. Let me introduce you. If nothing's amiss, this Hunter Master Linn will be your new employer. The attendant stammered. Master. The little girl didn't step out. Her voice trembled, tiny and sweet. Sir Vimy, this is... And then she trailed off. Linn looked at Vim, puzzled. He couldn't help thinking the dwarf had misunderstood him. Chapter 93. Freedom, oh freedom, how many crimes have been committed in your name? What he needed was a servant to clean the house, buy groceries, and cook, not a child who still needed to be taken care of. Master Linn, don't be fooled by her thin arms and legs, the dwarf banker pressed. This child can work. She isn't demanding either. A roof over her head and 2 meals a day will be enough. You needn't even pay wages. If it weren't for the Novigrad Council Hall's laws against child labor, I'd have taken her in myself, another added. Sometimes an overly advanced system is a nuisance. Linn's eye twitched at the implication. Lord Vim, do I look like some degenerate noble with certain peculiar tastes? Sensing the sudden awkwardness, Vimy was flustered and hurried to explain. No. Gods above, of course not. How could I think such a thing? I only meant the child would be useful to you. If you don't think she's suitable, I'll find someone else. He turned to his attendant. Lucas, bring the child out. Lucas nodded and beckoned the little girl. They walked out of the private room. Watching her thin back disappear, Linn felt a strange tug at his chest. If he didn't do something, this might be the last time he saw her, abandoned like a stray animal. His heart softened, and he called, Wait. Lucas had already opened the door to leave. At Linn's voice, he paused. Lord Vima, I'll give her a 1-month trial, Linn said. During that month, she'll clean my house, wash clothes and bedding, buy my groceries, cook, tend to the horse, and so on. If she does well, she can stay. I won't shortchange her pay. But if she disappoints me, she goes back. Have your men take her down, bathe her, and put her in clean clothes, Vimus said to his people, grinning. Lucas, you heard Master Linn. Do it. After they left, the VIP room fell quiet. Vim rubbed his hands together. Heh! I knew Master Linn wouldn't just stand and watch that poor child end up in the streets, starving. Linn frowned. He didn't like flattery or moral pressure. That's not necessarily true, Lord Vim. Don't forget, I'm a witcher. Witchers are heartless. If she can't handle the work, I'll throw her out. I mean it. Vim laughed and wisely stopped arguing. After a beat, Linn asked, "How did she come to be with you? Is she from the city or a nearby village?" "Neither," Vim said, scratching his head. "Her village was on the east side of the Kaer mountain range." "The Kaer, that's in Cadwin. How on earth did she get to Novigrad?" "The Kaer range stretches across the north, cutting from Hollipur to the Buina River and on to the border between Redania and Cadwin. Traveling from the east side of Kaer to Novigrad meant crossing Cadwin and all of Redania, a perilous, exhausting journey. Roads were full of bandits, brigands, wild beasts, ghouls. Even an able adult would struggle with such a trek. How, then, had such a frail child made it? I asked her, but she wouldn't say how she reached Novigrad, Vime replied. She only said her village was destroyed. Her parents and 3 elder brothers gave their lives so she and her older sister could escape. Her older sister froze to death along the way. Now she's the only one left. Tragedies like that were all too common in these times. The peace Linn remembered from home was a distant dream here. Who did it? Bandits? Cadweni soldiers? Linn asked. Vim shook his head. Not them. It was the free children, those elves who vowed to restore what they'd lost. You mean the free children? Linn echoed. Vim scoffed. The free children, the predecessors of the Scoia'tael. They called themselves free children. The name Scoia'tael only caught on after the First Northern War. But mark my words, the Nilfgaardians are behind much of what the free children do. Even their battle cries, drive the humans back into the sea, were taught by Nilfgaard. Deliberately attacking their own villages, deceiving their kin with lies, if the free children wouldn't think of it themselves, Nilfgaard would teach them. Don't make me laugh. Those pointy-eared folk shouldn't play the victim. Before humans arrived, their so-called glorious elven kingdoms practiced slavery, not of dwarves or gnomes, but of their own. You don't know about the Wagner system? Vim added, warming to his point. There was an Oxenfurt professor, Sigismund Grog, who put it perfectly. He said, and forgive the pedant in me, that to those ancient elven kings, a boot is a boot, and a hat is a hat. A boot can't be worn on the head, a hat can't be worn on the feet. So it was with subjects. Everyone had their place. Noble blood bred nobles, and the son of a serf was born to toil. If the son of a serf were to gain the same right to knowledge as a noble's son, why? That would be worse than the end of the world. He laughed and shrugged. But I digress. The point is, this child's worked hard while she's been with me. My people like her, especially Lucas. Don't let his quiet look fool you. He's simple but true. Give her a chance, and she won't disappoint. Linn didn't argue this time. Vim suddenly slapped his forehead. Nearly forgot. While you were away from Novigrad, Lord Luxor came by several times. He said there's an important matter he needs your help with. He hopes you'll visit him as soon as you return. Chapter 94. Are you serious? A city rose before Triss, high walls topped with glittering spires. On the far side, the sea spread gray-green under the morning sun, scattered with white sails. This was Gor's Velen, the capital of Velen province. Triss's destination, Aretuza Academy, lay within the city. The line to enter stretched far before the gate, but Triss sat upright in the saddle and let her horse trot forward. The guards posted at the gate noticed the sorceress and immediately made way, prodding anyone who refused to move or lagged behind with the shafts of their spears. This way, honored lady, one guard called. He dared only glance up at her for a moment before lowering his eyes again, then grated at the crowd. Move aside, you bumpkins. From the guardroom, a captain, who had been hiding there for a little peace and quiet, emerged at the commotion with a dark look. You lot can't do anything right, he snapped. Is it so hard to make people line up properly? Must I supervise even this? His scolding died the instant he set eyes on Triss. He flushed, his jaw dropped, and he bowed deeply. Honored lady, I humbly welcome you to Gor's Velen, he stammered, then straightened and fixed the most obsequious smile he could muster. I am at your service. Would you like an escort? A guide? Shall I fetch anyone for you? No need, Triss said, sitting straighter and looking down at him. She ignored his earlier grumbling. Disciplining the teams that drank on duty was Vizierad's business, not hers. I need to go to Senet Island. Of course, lady, Very good, lady. The captain and his men quickly opened a path. Triss rode on, and the guards bowed as she passed. Senet Island lay in the bay northwest of Gorsvelen, crafted long ago by elves and reserved for sorcerers. Aretuza sat on that island, linked to the city by a bridge. From a distance, the island looked like a monumental stone pillar rising from the waves. A great tholos wrapped a spiraling path. Winding ladders and platforms disappeared into gardens and groves. White towers clung to swan-neck rocks, and a domed building ringed with galleries crowned the green stone as if the whole place had been carved from the mountain itself. At the summit stood Tor Lara, the Tower of the Gulls, which hid a portal, one normally kept closed to protect the academy. A constant distortion lock prevented anyone from opening a portal directly onto Senet Island without the headmistress's permission. Those who tried were instantly teleported into a Demetrium-lined dungeon. That was why Triss had opened a portal outside Gorsvelen and ridden from there. Given her status as both sorceress and royal advisor, she had a clear path straight to the headmistress's office. She pushed the door open and entered. Margarita Luxantil, the headmistress, looked up from her desk. "Well, if it isn't our esteemed royal advisor," she said. "Triss, what brings you back so soon? Let me guess. King Foltest has decided one sorceress in the court isn't enough." Triss smiled. "Of course not. It's good to see you, Rita." Margarita rose and paced once around Triss. "I envy you," she said. "Look at me, either wiping the noses of bawling brats or dealing with rude, disrespectful students." Triss watched her circle. "What can you do? Who else was there to succeed Tisaya? By the way, do you know where Tisaya is? What's with that look?" A smile touched Margarita's lips. "I think I smell something fishy. You come back and immediately ask about Tisaya. Are you in trouble, or are you asking a favor?" Triss shook her head. "Neither. I want to ask her for a favor." "A favor? Then you must be in trouble." Margarita sat and crossed one leg. "Tell me, I'm the headmistress of Aretuza, a senior sorceress personally appointed by Tisaya. What can I do for you?" "You can't," Triss said quickly, before Margarita could leap up like an affronted cat. "I want Tisaya to cast an extension spell for me." "An extension spell? Why would you need that old pedant for something like that? Why not ask me?" "I need a permanent, constant extension spell, and the interior must be no smaller than a villa." Margarita's smile vanished. She gaped, a rare lapse of dignity for the usually composed headmistress. "Do you know what you're asking, Triss? A constant extension spell with a space the size of a villa. What on earth do you intend to do with it?" Something mischievous crept into her expression. "Wait, don't tell me you've fallen in love." Triss's face tightened as if she'd been struck. "That's none of your business." Margarita's grin returned, conspiratorial and delighted, like a schoolgirl who has found a secret diary. "You didn't deny it straight away. Miss Triss Marigold, top of Aretuza and King Foltest's royal advisor, actually falling hopelessly in love. And from the look of it, this isn't a casual dalliance. Other sorceresses just play around," she added. "But you're getting serious." Chapter 95. Some kittens are just kittens, but some kittens want to see the world burn. After leaving Vivaldi Bank, Linn went straight to Luxor's house. A servant led him into the reception room, where Luxor greeted him warmly. "Master Linn, you're back." Luxor's face brightened when he saw him. After a few polite words, Linn cut to the point. "Luxor, Vim mentioned your daughter wanted to ask me something." "Yes. Let her say it herself." Luxor's servant called Missiel in. She approached with a mixture of gratitude and respect. "Master Linn, I wonder if you still remember my professor." "Professor Higgsmon Grog? Of course I remember him. What happened?" It had been Professor Grog who first connected Linn to Luxor. The professor had asked Linn to investigate a missing student. Those clues eventually led to Luxor's family and their rescue. Through Luxor's introductions, Linn later met Vim of Vivaldi and Triss, so the Witcher remembered Grog well. "It's like this," Missiel said. "My mentor has been researching the legendary treasure of the elven King Maglor. You might not know, King Maglor once ruled the elven city-state of Itai." Linn nodded. He'd heard of Maglor before. Marco, one of Missiel's classmates, had mentioned the name. "So Professor Grog wants?" Missiel hesitated, worried he might refuse. My mentor has narrowed down the likely location of lost Itai, but given the dangers in the ruins, he wants to hire you to protect us. I see. How much is he offering? 150 crowns. Linn's brow rose. That's a bit low, isn't it? Misiel hurried to explain. If we run into monsters or traps, he can add 50 crowns, but that's the absolute limit, because Master Linn, you won't be the only Witcher guarding the expedition. There's another Witcher? Who is he? Misiel shook her head. I don't know the details. He was assigned to my professor by the man who funds him. Normally one Witcher would be enough, but the professor said, she swallowed, choosing her words. He always felt uneasy under a Witcher's stare. A Witcher should make him feel safe, but he didn't. Out of caution, Professor Grog asked for Master Linn. She paused, then added, since this money wasn't planned, the professor is paying from his own pocket, which is why it's lower than you might expect. But he also said that if treasure is found in the ruins, he could secretly give you a share. Linn considered it a moment. All right, tell Professor Grog I'll take the job. Misiel's face lit up. Wonderful. The professor and I both knew we could count on you. After leaving Luxor's house, Linn walked with a thoughtful expression. Most Witchers held to a strong professional ethic. In a world where people hired them for a few crowns to deal with monsters, Witchers often refused greater riches when it meant abandoning their code. If any group could have become mercenaries and grown wealthy and powerful, it would have been them. But most resisted. There was one exception, the infamous Cat School. As Linn knew from the stories, Cat School Witchers were different. They were the sort who, if there was profit to be made, would do anything. Even if killing someone would set the world on fire, they'd do it without hesitation. Misiel's commission brought that memory to the fore. In another timeline, Professor Grog's group had been slaughtered by a Witcher from the Cat School, sent by the professor's sponsor to protect them. There had been no survivors. Knowing what could happen, Linn felt the rightness of helping them. Later, back at Vivaldi Bank, Linn pushed open the VIP room door. The same girl he had seen earlier sat on the sofa, hands clasped, every nerve taut with fear. At his entrance, she sprang up as if propelled by springs, but stayed put to the side, too timid to approach, performing a clumsy imitation of a commoner's bow. She had bathed and changed into clean commoner's clothes and looked entirely different from before. Do you have any other instructions? Should I call Vim? She asked. Lucas, the dwarf attendant who had been waiting with her, shook his head. No need. I know Vimy is busy, but please tell him something for me. Linn paused. Ask him to arrange for someone to deliver fresh meat and vegetables to my place every day. I'll pay for the food and the delivery at the end of each month. I will pass that on, Lucas promised. Then we'll be leaving now. He motioned for the girl to follow. She did so obediently, stepping after him. They left Vivaldi Bank and headed toward the house where Linn was staying. As they passed a busy restaurant, a rich aroma drifted out. Gurgle. The sound came from behind him. Linn glanced back to see the girl shaking her head desperately. What does that mean? Aren't you hungry? I could hear your stomach. No, master, it wasn't me. Chapter 96. There the Bobcats Dance with the Wolves, Part 1. All right, even if you're not hungry, I am. Let's go find somewhere to eat. This place looks good. Linn hadn't told Vim directly, but he trusted that as long as Lucas passed the message along, fresh meat and vegetables would be sent the next day. That was tomorrow's problem. He couldn't go hungry today. Witchers were different, used to enduring hardships, able to go a day without food in a pinch, but he wasn't that cold-hearted when it came to a child in his care. He would not let someone who worked for him go hungry. They stepped into the restaurant. A waiter at the entrance, poised to greet customers, froze when he saw the Witcher's eyes. Is something wrong? Linn asked. No, it's just... Under Linn's gaze, the man stumbled, then hurried. No, nothing. Please, esteemed guests, come in. The waiter led them to an empty table. Linn sat and glanced at the girl standing behind him. Sit, he said. She sat down, but kept a posture that said she was ready to bolt at any moment. The waiter handed them menus. Linn pointed at the dishes and then closed his eyes, thinking. Professor Grog had sent them on a job. The professor would expect trouble from the ruins, not from people. Linn wasn't worrying about saving the professor. That wouldn't be difficult. He was worrying about preventing further damage to the Witcher reputation. If he and a cat school Witcher got into a fight in front of Professor Grog, the professor's opinion of Witchers would sink. He had to avoid that. Apologies for the wait, esteemed guests. The waiter set down steaming food and a jug of water, pulling Linn out of his thoughts. The aroma was good. Linn picked up a large bone, like the ones Luffy ate in tales the girl might have heard, and took a bite, tender, juicy, with a good texture. As he reached for a second bite, he noticed the girl staring at the food. She hadn't moved, but her eyes were fixed as if trying to pull the scent through her fingers. "Aren't you eating?" Linn asked. "Aye," she began, then stopped. "You work for me. How do you expect to work if you're not full? Eat." He didn't look at her after saying it, only at the bone in his hand. She hesitated, then reached out, fearful, as if convinced he would snatch back the food or scold her. When she realized he wasn't watching her, her shoulders eased and she began to eat. She ate too fast and started to choke. Linn handed her the water and patted her back gently. "Slow down. No need to rush. Ask if you want more." She drank the water in a single gulp, then picked at the food again, more carefully. After they'd both eaten their fill, Linn took her back to his lodgings. "This will be your temporary room, and where you'll live and work for the next month. As I said at Vivaldi Bank, if you do well, you can stay, and I'll even pay you a wage," he added. "But if you take my kindness for granted, or steal from me, you can go back where you came from, and as for what happens after that, you can probably guess." His words frightened the girl. Her face went as pale as snow. He wasn't the sort to scare children for sport. He preferred to be clear from the start. Rules up front spared everyone trouble. Triss had only paid half a year's rent on the place, but it was well located. If nothing went wrong, Linn planned to keep paying the rent himself. Novigrad, the Pearl of the North, made a better outpost for Witchers than Vizima. Linn intended, slowly but surely, to make Novigrad a secret stronghold for Witchers. One bite at a time. "What's your name?" he asked. "Cassia," she replied. "Good. Rest a bit. When you wake, get to know the area. You don't have to do anything today. Work starts tomorrow." A few days later, before dawn, a dozen people had already gathered near Oxenfurt's city gate. Some wore the blue and white of Oxenfurt University students and professors. Others were dressed as laborers. A carriage sat nearby with shovels and picks piled on it. A little farther off, a Witcher stood, 2 swords slung across his back. Professor Grog's students clustered together, whispering, "That Witcher? Is he here to guard our team? I don't like him. He looks at us like we're pigs to be slaughtered," Gottfried said with disgust. Gottfried had been Missiel's boyfriend once. Their breakup still left sparks. Marco, tall, thin, and freckled, lowered his voice. "Quiet, Gottfried. Witcher's hearing is sharp. Don't let him hear you." He glanced at Missiel. "Didn't you say the professor invited a Witcher named Linn too?" Missiel nodded. "Yes. Why isn't he here yet? He didn't forget we were meeting, did he?" "No. Master Linn wouldn't do that. Look, there he is." They all turned and saw a young, striking Witcher approaching slowly on a black horse. Before he reached them, a fierce-looking Witcher stepped in front of him, blocking the way. "Hey, Wolf Cub, what are you doing? Didn't you see somebody's already here? Go fetch somewhere else," the other Witcher barked. Linn reined in his horse and regarded the man blocking him. The man had the slit eyes common to the cat school. Around his neck, he wore a pendant shaped like a snarling cat head. Linn swung down from his saddle. "So you're the cat school Witcher assigned to protect the professor and his lot? Is this your idea of greeting a fellow Witcher? Shouldn't it be a warm embrace?" He smiled, but his voice was dry. Chapter 97. There the Bobcats Dance with the Wolves. Part 2. The same kind? Het tui. What same kind? What if we are the same kind? If I were you, I'd go back where you came from. The cat school Witcher's face was all malice and venom. "Wolf Cub, I advise you to behave. At this distance, I can stab my sword into your throat and make you taste rust before you even get your hilt out. Then why don't we try it?" Since the other man had dropped the pretense entirely, Linn saw no reason to keep playing the good guy. Let's see whose sword is faster or whose signs are faster. The cat school were indeed fast and deadly with a blade, but that reputation depended on context. Their terrifying speed and sword work showed only against opponents of equal or lower caliber. Brehon, the notorious Cat of Yellow, carried out the Yellow City Massacre precisely because he faced untrained townsfolk. Against monsters stronger than him, his swordsmanship failed to function properly. As for the cat school witcher standing before Linn, Kaen, he was clearly no Giadi, let alone Brehon. His threat sounded faint, impotent, and ridiculous to Linn. The tension thickened. "Then wait, stop, both of you!" Professor Grog came running from a distance and planted himself between them. He said nervously, "Master Kaen, you've got the wrong idea. Master Linn is also a guest I invited." "He?" Kaen turned on Professor Grog like he'd been betrayed. "What does this mean, Professor?" Kaen's eyes narrowed. His face flushed and his hair prickled. Seeing the Witcher bristle like that made Grog go pale, but he forced himself to explain. "Please don't misunderstand, Master Kaen. We do not doubt your professional competence. It's just that." He swallowed. "From what we know of the elven city-state Itai, it used to be mighty. That means there could be real danger in the ruins left by King Maglor." Kaen wasn't satisfied. "That's exactly why Prince Adrian sent me to protect you. Besides," he looked Linn up and down, "Prince Adrian only paid for one Witcher. You don't need to worry about that, Master Kaen. Master Linn's fee will be paid by me personally," Professor Grog blurted. Kaen stared at Grog so long the other man felt his scalp tingle. For a moment, Grog feared the worst. Fortunately, it didn't go the way he feared. If that's so, then fine. Kaen did not draw his sword. Instead, he forced a smile that was uglier than crying. "I was impulsive just now. Don't take it to heart, friend." He intentionally emphasized the word friend. Whatever he meant by it, the tone was unsettling. Linn showed no reaction, as if he hadn't caught the implication. "Of course." Kaen stepped away. "That was close, Master Linn. Lucky neither of you made trouble." Professor Grog exhaled in relief, though a cold fear still ran down his spine. He had asked Missiel to invite Linn specifically to use him as ballast, to steady Kaen, to be a counterweight. The madman Kaen had almost started a fight at the sight of another Witcher. If a real conflict had broken out, Grog didn't dare finish the thought. He forced himself to change the subject. "Master Linn, do you mind if I ask?" Linn could already guess what the question would be. "Professor, you mean, is that how Witchers treat their colleagues?" Grog looked after Kaen's retreating form. "So is that how it is?" "Depends on the person." Linn shook his head. Mutations aside, each Witcher school developed different customs. The Wolf School are closest to ordinary people. Their solemn, expressionless faces are mainly to avoid moral entanglements. The Griffin School, by contrast, shine with noble bearing. Its members prize virtue and personal cultivation. If Toussaint's Rangers practice chivalry partly for honor and worldly reward, Griffin Witchers truly embody do good for its own sake. They seek neither fame nor profit. They are inspired by chivalry and genuinely dedicate themselves to helping those harmed by monsters. At the other extreme is the infamous Cat School. Eccentric, aggressive, cruel, impulsive, extreme, volatile. A Cat School Witcher's morals and politics bend like a cat. While they take contracts to hunt monsters, they also regularly accept work that violates Witcher principles. So long as the employer pays, they will slaughter innocent commoners without a second thought. The Viper School also takes assassination contracts, though they are not as openly chaotic as the Cats. The Bear School are emotionally cold. Unlike the Wolf School's practiced reserve, it's a genuine lack of feeling. The Griffin School, for most Northerners, remains something of a mystery. If you meet a Witcher from a school other than Griffin, it won't be as tense as a Cat School encounter, but other Witchers still won't be especially pleased to see you. In Linn's homeworld, even stealing a kill in a game could spark a feud lasting generations. In a profession where another Witcher suddenly shows up and reduces your take, resentment is natural. Delacroix Estate, not far from Novigrad. In the glory days of the Haimau dynasty, this estate had been the dynasty's birthplace. Over time, the dynasty's lands were encroached on and absorbed by Redania. Only this estate and the surrounding visible lands remained under the dynasty's control. The last royal of the line, Prince Adrien, sat in a comfortable armchair in his study. Chapter 98. You already have a way to die. The study was bright, candlelight turning the room as clear as day. It fell across Kaen, the Cat School Witcher, standing before Prince Adrien with two swords slung on his back. I thought I'd been clear, the prince said. Adrian didn't look at Kayan. His gaze was fixed on a square wooden table between them. On it sat an exquisite, miniature model of a city, scaled down 1,000 times. It had once been the capital of the Haimao dynasty. Now it served as the Redanians' capital. Tretog. Things have changed, Kayan said quietly. Adrian's face darkened. Changed? You're telling me you can't handle a few students who can't catch a chicken and an old man half in his grave? It's not them, Kayan replied. It's Grog. He hired another witcher on his own coin. That finally drew Adrian's attention. Another witcher? Your colleague? Yes, Adrian breathed out. Can you turn him to our side? He had coin, enough to be dangerous. He didn't command vast lands or a court full of vassals like other princes, nor did he have a harem of concubines waiting for favors. Still, he was a prince. If this job went well, he planned to offer Kayan a long-term contract, kill only for him from then on. Kayan shrugged. Hard to say. He isn't cat school. Witchers from other schools have a stubborn flaw. A flaw? They don't always draw steel for money. They have a line they won't cross, something money can't buy. That's unfortunate. Adrian made a throat-slitting gesture. Then we'll have to make sure he doesn't interfere. Kayan nodded. All right, but it's extra work. Killing a witcher isn't like killing a dozen peasants. My fee will have to double. Adrian didn't blink. Double it. The job must be flawless. With that settled, Kayan turned to leave. Wait. He stopped at the doorway. Don't move until that old man Grog has dug out everything of value, Adrian said. The Elven Ruins treasure is what I want. Their heads are secondary. And whatever you do, take care of your colleague quickly. Don't let him become a long-term problem. The next day, as the party set out again, Kayan sought out Linn and apologized earnestly. He told the Wolf School Witcher that his trial of the grasses had been incomplete, that it left him hearing voices other people could not. Those voices tormented him, urging terrible things. He fought them. Sometimes he won, sometimes he didn't. Yesterday had been one of the losses. He'd recovered now and hoped Linn would not hold yesterday against him. Kayan's tone was contrite. Linn accepted the apology magnanimously. To everyone watching, the two of them looked like brothers again. But after Kayan left, Linn's expression hardened. He sniffed. Humph, he talks as if it's true. What Kayan didn't know was that Linn not only suspected what Kayan would do next, he already knew, and he knew something worse. The tragic fate that awaited Kayan afterward. Late that night, the moon washed the grassland in pale light. In the center of the plain, the camp lay quiet, ringed by a crude fence that offered only rudimentary protection. Tents formed a circle around a bright campfire. Everyone slept in their tents. Only one figure moved in the open air, the cat school witcher on night watch, Kayan. Even without a cat potion, witchers could see better than ordinary men under a full moon. Kayan checked the perimeter and listened. It should be about right. Even a witcher should be asleep by now, he muttered. Prince Adrian wanted the other witcher, Kayan's colleague, removed. Kayan would do it whether the other witcher asked it or not. Outside the cat school, witchers often had principles the cat school found inconvenient. Since Adrian intended to eliminate all witnesses once the treasure was found, Kayan would have to remove any obstacle. 2 days of observation had shown him one useful habit. The Wolf School Witcher, who called himself Linn, never touched food from the common pot. He always ate his own. That made Kayan's work easier. At dinner, he had quietly added something to the communal stew, not poison, but a powerful soporific. It would put everyone else into a dead sleep they wouldn't wake from for hours. Despite his confidence, Kayan prepared carefully. He drank a potion to sharpen his reflexes and senses, and he anointed one sword with poison. The cat school didn't excel at toxins. That was Viper School craft. But in Novigrad, Coin bought most things. A merchant there had sold him a venom said to come from beyond the Tir Tosha Mountains, from the hostile Korath Desert. The desert's yellow sands hid countless venomous creatures. The toxin, extracted from their bodies, caused instant paralysis, then death shortly after. No agony, only the body going still. When preparations were complete, Kayan moved to Linn's tent. He stood by the flap and listened to the even breath inside. "Don't blame me, fellow witcher," he murmured. Then he slipped inside and plunged his sword down. Chapter 99, Surprise Motherfucker. But The feel at the tip of his sword was wrong. That wasn't the resistance of stabbing a person. Kayan froze, then yanked the tent flap open. Inside the tent, there was nothing but a pierced blanket. No body, no blood. It's late, and you're bored standing guard alone, so you decided to come over and have a heartfelt chat? A teasing voice said behind him. Kayan spun. The Wolf School Witcher, who ought to have been in his own tent, stepped out of another one. Kayan's eyes widened. Surprised? Shocked? Happy? The man mocked. Kayan stopped pretending. He'd known this Witcher wasn't someone to be taken lightly. That was why Linn had hidden in the adjacent tent while Kayan volunteered for the night watch. He hadn't expected the other man to actually show up. If you hadn't been so meddlesome, I would have given you a quick death, Kayan spat. Linn sneered. I'm really grateful for that. Die with that arrogant attitude. Kayan didn't bother to explain. He slashed through the air and lunged. The cat school's reputation for speed and swordsmanship wasn't empty talk. Kayan's movement was a blur. One moment he stood still, the next he'd drawn and thrust. He'd closed the distance in an instant and was certain he would land the blow. What? The strike meant nothing. Kayan's face went pale. Linn hadn't dodged with a wide step. He'd only shifted a hair to the side. That tiny movement proved Linn's speed outclassed Kayan's. Worse, Linn hadn't been merely waiting. He'd taken full enhancement, and when Kayan's approach alerted him, he swallowed a superior blizzard and a superior wolf potion. Their effects, far stronger than Kayan's standard brews, multiplied his speed. This can't be. I don't believe it. Kayan felt sweat bead on his brow. He gritted his teeth and pushed his wrist again. The air tore with a terrible sound as his blade flashed 4 more times. Anyone else would have been cut to ribbons. But Linn, as if he'd anticipated every stroke, slipped aside and avoided each thrust. My turn, then, Linn said. Before Kayan could pull his blade back, Linn grabbed his sword arm. Then his fist hit Kayan's face like a warhammer. Strength and will evaporated in an instant. Kayan's legs went to jelly, his thoughts went blank, and a high ringing filled his ears. The next punches came, the second, the third, and after only a few blows, Kayan lost consciousness. Kayan had been unlucky. He'd thought himself cautious, but he was facing a man who'd prepared for this. Linn stepped on Kayan's neck without hesitation, snapped it, and ended him. Linn looked at the corpse with no pity. In the original tale, apart from Professor Grog, Kayan had murdered everyone else. Even Grog, who'd briefly survived, had later died in the ruins. If the Viper School took assassination contracts, at least they targeted dignitaries. The Cat School, for money, wouldn't even spare commoners. It was distasteful, but not unexpected. He dragged Kayan's body well away from the camp, washed the blood from himself, and returned to his tent. He lay down and resumed his meditation as if nothing had happened. Master Linn! Master! Something terrible has happened! Professor Grog's voice called early the next morning. Linn ended his meditation, stood as if just waking, and walked out. Outside, Professor Grog and the students wore panicked faces. What's wrong? Linn asked, feigning concern. Marco stammered. Master Kayan, who was on night watch, is missing. Master Linn, did you hear anything last night? Linn's expression turned shocked. What? How is that possible? Have you searched everywhere? Misiel answered. We've checked all around, but found nothing. There are only a few footprints leading away from the camp, perhaps Kayan's, so we came to find you. They had found tracks, but hadn't followed them. If those footprints were Kayan's, something had happened out there. Linn showed no emotion at Misiel's words. He merely nodded and said calmly, Take me to see. At the edge of camp, a clear trail of footprints led outward. Professor Grog and the others hung back, eyes fixed on Linn. No one spoke. After a long look, Grog finally asked, Master Linn, do you see anything? Linn pretended to study the prints and replied, It looks like he discovered something while on patrol and left the camp. Grog's questioning gaze swept the group and settled on Linn. Then we'll know if we follow them, Linn said flatly. Thanks to friends who voted for monthly and recommendation tickets, thank you for your support. The footprints Kayan had left were scattered, appearing and disappearing in no discernible pattern. But Linn, with his exceptional tracking skills and Witcher-enhanced senses, followed them until they led the group to a reed bed. Master Linn, is Kayan in there? Someone asked. Linn nodded, then his expression sharpened. He lifted a hand, signaling everyone to stop. Hold on, do you hear that? Professor Grog and the others exchanged puzzled looks. Hear what, Master? Over there, Linn said. They all turned to where he was looking. What they saw drained the color from their faces, small, warped, skeletal figures no more than a meter tall moving through the reeds. Their motions were jerky and insect-like. Sunken, jaundiced eyes bulged on flat, wrinkled faces. Small, frog-like mouths revealed jagged fangs. From time to time, a sibilant hiss escaped them. Missiel opened her mouth to scream, but Professor Grog, old and quick, clapped a hand over it before a sound could come out. Marco and Gottfried were steadier, but both looked ashen. Master Linn, what are those? Marco whispered. Neckers, Linn answered. Creatures that spread with the sphere conjunction. He let his gaze sweep slowly over the group. Their tracks go into the reed bed. Caen may already be, he lied. Caen's death had nothing to do with the Necker nest hidden in the reeds. The truth was that when Linn had taken Caen's body from the camp the day before, he'd found this reed bed and the nest the Neckers had built inside it. Linn had cremated Caen in private, then disguised himself to look like Caen leaving the camp and erased every trace except for those intermittent footprints leading toward the reeds. You all step back, Linn said. I'll deal with them. Can't we just leave before they notice us? Missiel breathed. We could. Linn replied, but if someone innocent stumbles through, it will cost them their life. A witcher's duty is to protect people. If I hadn't seen them, fine, but now that I have, I must act. They obeyed and retreated. Linn drew his silver sword, the gleam of a witcher's blade, and stepped into the reeds. The Neckers noticed the intruder and surged forward, hissing. They were fast, hands like sticks clawing the air as they lunged. Missiel couldn't bear to watch. Professor Grog and the others pressed their hands to their mouths. Then silver flashed. The Necker claws struck light, then flew apart. Limbs and heads severed, scattering as twin red arcs. The remaining Neckers fell on Linn with a frenzy, but the masterful sweeps of his blade cut them down in a blur. The reeds hid much of the fight. To those watching, it was a frantic strobe of silver and crimson, a chorus of hissing replaced by the harsh music of steel. The scene was chaotic and fast. For a long, terrifying while, the only sounds were the blade through the air and the Necker cries. At last, one final shattering scream cut off, and suddenly there was only silence. Even the reeds seemed to freeze. Then Linn emerged, a young man splattered with blood, his silver sword still in hand. Professor Grog was the first to rush to him. Master Linn, are you all right? Linn waved a hand. I'm fine. They're all dead. Go back to camp. Professor Grog hesitated. And you? Linn drew a handkerchief from his cloak, wiped the blade clean with methodical care, then sheathed it. I'll burn the bodies. The smell of blood and rot will draw other scavengers if I don't. After a beat, Marco found his voice. Master Linn, you and the professor should go back to camp. We can handle it here. Linn shook his head. Can you really stomach seeing guts and blood spread all over the ground? I can, Gottfried said, though his face was pale. In truth, none of them liked picturing what lay within the reeds, the messy, unpoetic afterlife of battle. Still, the thought of doing something useful, of being needed, lit a stubborn flare in Gottfried. He admitted he couldn't have made the kills Linn had, but burning corpses? That he could do. All right, we'll take care of it, Linn said, clapping Gottfried on the shoulder. He and Professor Grog and Missiel left. Marco and Gottfried stayed, briefly trading looks. Stop staring, Gottfried muttered. You volunteered too. Hurry up. The sooner we're done, the sooner we're gone from this stinking place. They went into the reeds. They kept the camp waiting a long time. When Marco and Gottfried finally returned, they were nearly unrecognizable, pale, their faces twisted, their clothes smelling foul. Before Professor Grog could greet them properly, both men vomited, a grotesque, echoing display. Linn said nothing. He simply listened as the two, still green around the gills, tried to describe what they'd seen. Professor Grog sighed, some mixture of pity and relief in his voice. When we get back, we'll find a bard, he declared. We'll have a song composed for Caen, tell it as it should be told. He smiled faintly. That, he decided, would be enough. Compared with being taken in another timeline to become an experimental subject and die in torment, in this world, Caen could be remembered as a hero. He would live on in the bard's songs.